So here's what we're going to do. Projects 1, 2, and 3 are all the same thing. You're going to take about 12 inches of half-inch or 5/8 ACR tubing, cut them into 6 2-inch sections, swage the end of them, and for projects 1, 2, and 3, you'll be brazing. Now, I set these things up to actually show you the procedure to actually set up, use, and shut down each torch outfit. You ready? So, let's do the first one. Okay, now let's go through the procedure. This is the regulator. This is called the regulator. And if you notice, back here, the knob of the regulator, if you turn it this way, clockwise, when looking at it from that point of view, that increases the flow of gas from the tank to the hose, clockwise. Turning it this way, counterclockwise, decreases the flow of gas to the hose. Got it? Before you open the tank, make sure the regulator is back-seated all the way counterclockwise. Got it? Then you can open the tank. So with it all the way back-seated, counterclockwise, take our special little key here, open the tank. So all you really need is about a half a turn, quarter of a turn. Then put your nose down there. Check to see if the packing is leaking. And if you smell something, what you could do is take an adjustable wrench and tighten this to stop the leak. All right? Then, with this thing open, take a look at the gauge. The gauge will tell you the capacity of the tank. And we've got almost a full tank here. Got it? So, after you've backseat the regulator, open the valve, put your nose in there, check for leaks. Make sure all these connections are nice and tight. The connection to the hose to the regulator. Take a good look at the hose. Make sure there's nothing wrong with the hose. And of course, the connection from the hose to the handle, and of course, make sure that the torch tip is nice and firm. The way you actually take it out, it has a locking detent mechanism. You pull the collar down and you take it out like so. Make sure that that's in there nice and snug. There's no cracks in any of the handles. No cracks in the handle. You take a good look at the handle, no problem. Now, the way this is called a turbo torch tip. The way this one works is I want you to treat this valve here on the handle as like an on or off. On or off. Here's the way you actually set this one up. Open the hand valve just like a quarter to half turn. Like so. Then at the regulator, put this to your ear. Put this to your ear. And at the regulator, turn it clockwise until you hear gas coming out. Hear gas? All right, then it's ready. Close it. It's ready to strike. We have a number of striking assemblies here. Notice there's no tip here on this striker. And I want you to see what we have available. This is what you need. See that right there? The tip. When that thing wears down, you simply unscrew it, put a new one in its place, screw it in. Oops. This is called a flint. And you need to practice striking. You need to literally practice this. The way it works is you have to push down and across to get a nice spark. Push down and across. And it's not as easy as it looks. Try it. Push down and across. Get a nice spark. It's not as easy as it looks, huh? You got to practice doing this. Now, when you've set this thing up, strike it. Open this torch handle quarter to half turn. Strike it. You see the yellow? The yellow means there's not enough gas coming out. So at the regulator, increase the flow of gas until you get rid of the yellow. No more yellow, right? That's the correct flow pressure. That's the correct pressure. Now, how do you use this? We're just going to braze this sitting onto the top of here, all right? When you use alloy, this alloy, notice it has 0% silver, 0%. This is 0% brazing alloy. So now, with the blue, you want the blue on the metal. See the blues on the metal? Oops. The blue on the metal. Heat up both pieces. Both pieces with cherry color. See the cherry color for me? Good. Then put the heat above it, above the joint. Go all the way around. You've done it. Now, obviously, that's pretty oxidized. Take a wet rag. You can clean it up nice and clean. Now, after brazing, you need to shut down the torch. And I want you to do that. After you're brazing your joints, after you finish brazing, shut down the torch. So, the correct steps to shut down the torch. First, close the tank. Close the tank. Close the tank. Then, bleed off all of this gas that's in the hose. Open this. You'll go down to E. Lastly, backseat the regular counterclockwise. So I'm going to turn this thing counterclockwise. Backseat the regular counterclockwise. This is the proper way to shut down the torch outfit. Got it? Close tank, bleed off gas, backseat the regulator. Then you could put this thing, maybe this is really hot, so keep this aside. Make sure. Now, you saw brazing. That's brazing at high temperature. I wanted you to see the difference between brazing and soldering. This is an acetylene tank. It's a B tank. That's the size of the tank. This is also acetylene, but notice the difference in the torches. See the difference in the torches? Now, how does this one work? The high pressure acetylene rushes through a little nozzle inside there and getting through to the hose. The high pressure gas causes a low pressure inside this nozzle, a low pressure. That low pressure inside here causes air over here to be drawn in through these four holes. So the air from here is sucked in through these holes into the torch tip here, mixes with the acetylene, the air, the oxygen, mixes the acetylene, mixes together. And right out here, that's when the gases are essentially burning. And if you look at it, it looks like at the very end, there's at the nozzle, there's some almost like guide veins causing the gas to swirl like this. This is called a turbo torch tip. This is not the same thing. Not the same thing. Now, let me show you the difference in what the flame looks like. Brazing as compared to soldering. Completely different. So let's go through the steps of soldering. No, once again, before you open the tank, the regulator is counterclockwise all the way back. Oh, someone forgot to do it. All the way back. Make sure that the regulator is all the way back. Now, why are we doing that? Why is the regulator all the way back before you open the tank?
Because you're going to get gas into the tube and stuff as soon as you turn the tank on.
Actually, what you're going to do is if this regulator was forward, then you open the tank. The high pressure gas inside here would literally cause the diaphragm inside here, that's what's inside their diaphragm to regulate the actual flow, a diaphragm to rupture. Because if that thing's all the way forward, and then you open this thing, you get a high pressure amount of acetylene, high pressure gas onto this little metal disc, and it can really rupture. That's how we lose regulators. Students open these tanks with these regulators all the way forward or partially forward. This thing's all the way forward, they open the tank, boom, the diaphragm is busted. That's how we lose regulators. So before you open the tank, make sure that this regulator adjustment is all the way back. Then you open the tank, just like before. Quarter half turn. Put your nose down there. Check for leaks. Take a look at the gauge. I've got almost a full tank. Make sure all your connections are nice and tight. This is tight. The hose is in good shape. The connection between the hose and the handle is nice and snug. There's no cracks in any part of the handle. Now this one is held in place by screwed on. It's literally screwed in place. Not the locking detent mechanism of the other one. It's screwed in place like this. Now, put it back in place, screw it back in place. Make sure it's nice and tight. Nice and tight. Nice and tight. All right. Now, just like before, the adjustment, I do it by listening. This is all the way back. It's open. Use this as an on or off. Crack it open a quarter half turn. Slowly open this until your gas coming out. Your gas? It's ready. It's ready. Now, use your striker. Crack it open. Strike it. See the difference? Mm-hmm. Very big difference. This is a soft, cooler flame compared to... Hold this for me. Very soft flame. Now when you are soldering, by the way, when you shut it off, air does come in through here mixing with the acetylene, but there's a non-swirl feature, it's not the same thing. You'll get a little bit of backdraft when you turn the gas off. Don't worry about that, that's normal. When you're soldering, what I want you to use is this soldering alloy. It's called Bridget. Use this or the 95.5. 95.5 is 95% lead, 5% antimony. No, not 95% antimony, 5%. What is that? 95.5 is 95%. It has no lead in it. 5% antimony and 95%. Oh, I forgot. Tin. Thank you. Tin and antimony. Thank you. When you're soldering, I want you to use the appropriate flux. Now, we have a couple of fluxes inside there. It's very easy to get the wrong one. This is for low temperature solder. This looks identical, but this one is for brazing. When you are brazing at high temperatures, like for example copper to steel or copper to brass, you're using this flux, not this one. It says brazing. Don't grab the wrong one. This one's for brazing. You use brazing alloy with this particular flux. Soldering is done with either this or this for low temperature. use Bridget or the 95.5. Now, the next outfit. Shutting it down is exactly the same thing. You want to close the tank, bleed off the gas, backseat the regulator. Shutting down is for this tank is exactly identical for this regulator. Now, that's the one. Your project 1, 2, or 3 is done with this or with this one. This one uses the same acetylene fuel, same regulator design, but the torch is a little bit different. This is a self-striking feature. It's really kind of cool. To set it up, before you open the tank, the regulators are counterclockwise all the way back. Looks like someone screwed up. All the way back. Then open the tank, quarter half turn. Put your nose down there. Check for leak. I have about a half a tank left. Now, the thing about this guy, make sure all the connections are tight. Hose connection, hose connection. There's no crack in the handle, no obvious problem. The locking detent mechanism, this is secure. You remove it just like before. You pull down the collar, lift it up. Make sure that this is nice and secure. But this is different, the way you start this guy up. This is different. This guy likes a lot of gas on startup. So, it's a little bit different. What I'm going to do is, at the regulator, tank's open, at the regulator, put it on full. On full. Full. Then, open this, like a, turn it, consider it like an on-off switch. Open it, quarter half turn, and then push this button here. Now, at the regulator, you can adjust the flow. See the yellow? Not enough. Get rid of the yellow. That's okay. That's okay. Let's raise this one too. I'm just going to see my brazing rod? Get them both up to cherry color. See the cherry color for me? Put the heat above the joint. Go all the way around. When you're done, shut off the tank. Shut off the flow right here. When you've done all your joints, you're ready to shut down the tank. Shutting down the tank is identical to the last one. First, close the tank. Close the tank. Open this to bleed off all the gas. That'll go down to 0 on the gauge. Then, backseat this regulator. And when you wrap this thing up, make sure that that's really kind of hot so it's not going to touch anything. It's not going to touch the hose. So that is the Turbo Torch Self Striker. The big difference is this guy likes a lot of gas on startup. A lot of gas on startup. Let me show you what will happen if you don't give it enough gas on startup. So I'm going to open the tank again. Quarter half turn. Check for leaks. Check all connections. All connections. Handle, no cracks. Connection here. Nice and tight. But let's say that I don't give this enough gas on startup. So I'm just going to turn it a couple of turns. But I'm not giving it enough gas. I open this. Let's get it with some gas. But I don't have enough, so I'm going to... That's telling me I don't have enough gas, so I need to increase it. Get enough gas. See the big difference? And then adjust the regulator, get rid of the yellow. You've got some yellow there. The yellow actually is a problem because the inside of the nozzle has got some soot in it, some black stuff. So I need to clean that out with a little, because I know I have enough pressure, but the yellow is because of soot blocking the flow. It too, right here you can see the holes. So what happens is the high pressure acetylene goes through the nozzle, creates a low pressure zone. Air over here is sucked into those 4 holes, mixes with the gas inside. The tip over here has a swirling deflector vanes to swirl the gas when it's burning. But the big difference is the self-striking feature, which is really kind of cool. But you have to have enough gas on startup. Otherwise you get that it's not igniting. So one of your projects, project 1, 2, or 3, is with this one. Got it? So now the last one is the oxyacetylene. One of your projects, projects 1, 2, or 3, one of them will be using this outfit. So let's go through the procedure on setting this thing up, using it, and shutting it down. Now, this is oxygen, this is acetylene. This is the regulator for the oxygen, and this is the regulator for the acetylene. Notice the regulators are very different than the regulators over there. Let's go through the procedure to set these things up, set this thing up properly. Before you open either tank, make sure the regulators are counterclockwise all the way out, literally until they practically fall. Make sure that they're all the way back, all the way out. Then you can open up the tank. The oxygen tank likes to be opened up all the way. So take the oxygen tank, open it up all the way. That's what I call a double-seated valve. Now, as soon as you open it, this gauge right here on the left shows you the tank pressure. So it tells me, yes, I have enough oxygen inside this thing to get me through my brazing project. This gauge right here tells me the pressure flowing in the hose. Okay? So once again, before you open this one, make sure that this regulator is literally all the way back. This direction increases the flow of gas to the hose. This direction decreases the flow of gas to the hose, just like the oxygen. This increases the flow of gas to the hose. This decreases the flow of gas to the hose. Got it? Now, before I open the tank of the acetylene, make sure this one's all the way out, counterclockwise all the way back, until literally the better ones actually have stops. All right, open the tank, but just in case, open the tank for both of them. Stay away from the front end, just in case, kaboing, the gauges kind of like explode. Stay away from the front end just in case. Open the tank, quarter half turn. The gauge on the left tells me I got about a little bit more than a quarter of a tank. That's the gauge on the left. That's enough for me to get through my brazing project. The gauge on the right, just like the gauge on the right over here, tells me the flow pressure. Now, make sure all connections are tight. Check, make sure your hose has got no hole in it, crack in it, or anything like that. The green is my oxygen. The red is my acetylene. This valve right here controls the flow of the oxygen in this hose. This gauge, this valve right here, controls the flow of the acetylene. The flow pressures. This is a relatively small tip. You don't really need a great deal of flow pressure for either the acetylene or oxygen with this small tip. And this is a big enough tip for all of the work we do in refrigeration. This is big enough. So what I do is I adjust the flow pressures to anywhere between 3 and 5 pounds. You could start on the light side, 3 pounds, as long as you have something between 3 and 5 pounds. So what I do is I will adjust the flow pressures of the acetylene and the oxygen to anywhere between 3 and 5 pounds. I can start light. It's about 3 pounds. So watch this gauge on the right. Increase the flow. Now both of these are closed. Both these hand valves are closed. Closed, closed. Adjust this to about 3 pounds. 3 pounds. That's the one on the right. 3 pounds. Now try to get, it's a little bit more difficult, try to get this gauge to the same 3 pounds. If this one's adjusted to 5, try to get this one to the same thing, 5. Small tip, you don't need anything much between 3 and 5. Now this is a little bit harder because you can see the 20 and the one underneath it's 10, so it's a little bit hard to know exactly where 3 to 5 pounds is, but you can eyeball it, you can estimate it. All right, it's roughly about 3 to 5 pounds. So my pressures are set. You'll need a striker. Thank you. Check, make sure your striker's in good shape. Keep the oxygen closed. Crack open the acetylene, quarter to half turn. You hear pressure coming out? Guys? Quarter to half turn, and then strike it. You see all the black stuff? The black stuff? That tells me that there's not enough acetylene pressure. Increase the regulator until you don't see any more black stuff. Now I've adjusted this. I've only opened this to half a turn. Now I have no idea what the gauge is actually telling me. I'm adjusting the flow based upon what I see. I get rid of the black stuff. I don't see much any more black stuff. Do you? No. Now, if you put too much acetylene flow, look at the flame on the tip. If you put too much acetylene flow, oh, look what happened. The flame has jumped off the tip. See it? That's too much acetylene flow. Decrease the regulator until the flame is back on the tip. Now increase it until you get rid of the black smoke. Now, do I know what the flow pressure is, what the gauge pressure is? No, I don't know. I'm looking at the flame. I'm adjusting the regulator flow based upon what I see in the flame. Is the flame on the tip? Do I see black smoke? All right, now that the flame, the black stuff is gone, the flame is still on the tip. Oh, got to decrease it now. That's good. I slowly open the oxygen. Slowly open the oxygen. Oh. Slowly open the oxygen. If you open the oxygen enough, that is a neutral flame. Equal acetylene and oxygen. If I close the oxygen a little bit, close it, you see that outer cone forming, that outer white cone? That is called a carbonizing flame. That is a cooler flame. It has basically more acetylene than oxygen. For our purposes, I think we should start with a carbonizing flame because a neutral flame is really, really hot. Let me show you how hot this is. I'm going to put this thing on my copper and we adjust the heat by a distance. Watch this. I just put a hole in my copper. A big hole. A neutral flame is really, really hot. So I suggest starting with a somewhat cooler flame. So I'm going to close off the oxygen a little bit. Give you a little outer feather. and use that, a slightly carbonizing cooler flame. You do the same thing. You heat up both pieces when they're cherry color. See, that's the advantage of octoselling speed. Look how fast it takes to get to cherry. See? The advantage of this is speed. Speed. Really fast. Then, shut it down. I always shut down my fuel first. Then my oxygen. Then, to shut down the rest of the tank, you need to shut down both tanks. Close. Close. Just like before, open these to bleed off all the gases. Open, bleed, goes down to 0. Open, bleed, goes down to 0. Then, what do you do with the regulators? Backseat them, counterclockwise, till they're nice and loose. Let's do this process again. Before you open the tanks, both regulators backseated. Open the tank. Doesn't make any difference which one you start with. Settling, open it quarter half turn. Take a look at the gauge to see, and this one on the left, see if you have enough for settling. I do. Open the oxygen, but all the way. As soon as you crack it open, you see that gauge. It tells me there's enough oxygen for you to do the job. Open up all the way. Make sure all of the hoses are connected, nice and tight. I've just opened this one. Your nose is pretty sharp. Make sure the acetylene connections are tight, oxygen connections are tight. Now, this one right here, the tip. If you did want to change the tip, because maybe you're dealing with bigger pieces, you can actually take this one off. You'll probably need your channel locks to get this thing off. It just screws off. Now, adjust the pressures. Roughly, to eyeball it, about 3 pounds to 5 pounds. Acetylene, 3 pounds, 5 pounds, not very much. 3 pounds. Oxygen, 3 to 5 pounds. That's all you need. Oops, this was open. With the oxygen closed, crack open the acetylene, just a quarter half turn. Open this to full half turn. Increase this to get rid of black smoke. But not too much where it jumps off the tip. Watch it jump off the tip if I put too much. See? Decrease it to get back on the tip. Now, increase it to get rid of the black smoke, but not enough for it to jump off the tip. No more black smoke. So on tip. I have no idea what the pressures are. I'm adjusting things based upon the flame. Slowly add oxygen. Now, if you don't do the oxygen, if you don't do the oxygen slow and do it real fast, I'll try to simulate that. If I do it too fast, you actually might, if you open the oxygen too fast and there's not enough acetylene pressure, you actually, if you open the oxygen too fast, you'll snuff out your flame. That's what could happen. I was trying to get that to actually happen. So, oxygen closed, crack open the acetylene, quarter half turn. Get rid of black smoke, increasing it, but not to the point where it flame jumps off the tip. No black smoke, flames on tip. Slowly add the oxygen, nice and slow. Slowly add the oxygen, nice and slow. That's what carbonizing does. Now, you could at this point increase the acetylene. Increase the acetylene. Top it off by adding some more oxygen. Oh, I'm opening this up, more oxygen not going. So, I need to increase the oxygen over here. Increase the oxygen over here, watch this. Now that is a hot, hot flame. That'll do the job really, really fast, faster than these two. The way you adjust the heat is the distance from the flame to the copper, like this. Nice cherry color. Put the flame at the joint. If you stay there too long, what'll happen? So the way you adjust the heat is by the distance from the flame to the copper. There's no way to adjust the heat. And that takes a bit of practice. That's why we're here, practicing this. Now, shut the fuel off first. So let's shut the oxygen off. Then we close both tanks. Close. Close. Open, bleed. Open, bleed. Last step, backseat the regulators till they're nice and loose. And that's going to be what you guys are going to use for your projects 1, 2, and 3. The air-acetylene turbo torch, the air-acetylene turbo torch with the self-striking feature, and the oxyacetylene outfit. Projects 1, 2, and 3. I don't care which one you start with. If you start with this one, project 1, next project 2, do this one. Then the following project 3, do that one. If you start with this one, the air-acetylene turbo torch with the self-striker, project 2, use this one. Or project 2, use this one. So does everybody understand the process? We are going to be practicing this. Practicing setting them up, practicing using, practicing shutting down. And I do want you to do that. I want you to shut down your system, shut down the tanks, shut down after you use it. So the next guy who comes along, he has to go through all of the steps. Got it? Well, I think this was a very, very